Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Hey, Mike, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Phil, and to everybody out there in Listeningville. Excited to be here for another episode of the Random Waypoints Podcast. And I'm pretty sure we have a lot to talk about today, as usual.
So let's get right into it, Mike. Across the country, Democrats are being fired after online posts that seem to celebrate or encourage political violence. Employers and platforms are cracking down hard, but it's sparking a national debate. Where's the line between free expression and public safety? So, Mike, should someone be able to keep their job if their online speech sparks outrage?
Oh, gosh. You know, we're starting out heavy and hard on this podcast. You're not giving me any breaks, Phil.
Oh,
I thought you were going to ask me what my thoughts were on the upcoming Taylor Swift album, but, I guess not.
That'll be next podcast.
Oh, yeah, I know. We're getting there. October 3rd, people. Wow, that's a I could talk for the next hour on that. That could be the whole podcast right there, Phil. How do I feel about that? That's a mixed bag, right? So let me start out by saying that over the last, call it 10 years, we've had this cancel culture sort of thing. And I know I'm going to take a little bit of flack for this probably, but I think a lot of the cancel culture tended to come from the left side prior to this. And I think with the Charlie Kirk assassination thing, we're seeing that what obviously the left is calling cancel culture going the opposite direction. And I can certainly understand that viewpoint. So some of the difference here, though, is, and I'm not saying there. I would say in general, most of it is the same. So if I'm on the left and I don't like something and I'm going to boycott it, or I'm on the right and I don't like something, I'm going to boycott it the other direction. I'll give you an example. So for the last 10 years, I've had friends that have, say, refused to go to Hobby Lobby, or they've refused to go to Chick-fil-A, right, because they're Christian or religious, or you're closed on Sunday or whatnot. So to me, that's a smaller element of, say, cancel culture, right? I'm going to avoid that. And then now what's happened is you've had people, and I got to tell you, I've seen a wide range of, quote, firings based on people saying something negatively towards the Charlie Kirk thing. And when I say range, some of them I would have agreed. I would have been like, you got to fire that person's ass. That's just not acceptable at all. And then I've heard other things where I'm like, really? That was barely saying anything. So there's been kind of a range of what they've done. And an example to that would be that doctor, I think it was in New Jersey, that said, I'm glad he's dead, blah, 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 whatever he said. It was a bunch of shit. And this nurse, I watched her online, talk about it. And he eventually got fired. But yeah, he's a doctor for that's the last guy that should be saying, I'm glad somebody died, right? That's craziness. But on the other side of that, they canceled last night Jimmy Kimmel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to exactly what he said. I don't think he said that much, to be honest. Now, let's make it clear here. I think that the network was just looking for a reason to get rid of him anyways, because they're all losing. These late night shows are all losing money. We saw that before. So I think there was just there was like, oh shit, he said something about Charlie Kirk. Let's get rid of him. And for sure, I think there's and we're going to probably talk about this later on the podcast, but there's some pressure from the Trump administration and his, I'll call him compatriots, the FCC guy and a couple other people, where they're really on a anti-free speech crusade, if you will. I'll paint it that way, and we can talk about that. But did I? I don't think I answered your question at all. I'm rambling. What do you think, Phil? I'm gonna turn it back on you because
So if I have to give like a straight legalese type answer, you shouldn't have to be worried about what you say to keep your job.
I think that might depend a little bit on what your job is. No,
set that to the side. I also feel like if I have taken on the burden of guaranteeing that you get a paycheck on the 1st and the 20th or every 2 weeks or however I pay you to do a job for me and you're representing my company, I should have the right to decide whether I want you to continue employing with me. If I have taken the time out to pursue this capitalistic dream of America and start my own business so I can have more control of my life, that's how we frame that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the most important control of my life at that point would be able to be what kind of message do I want to put out there about me? And an employee is a direct. If I'm the CEO of Target, the guy all the way at the cash register has more impact on what people think about the company in their interactions and what they say and do than I do.
Yes.
And I'm not about to have that. And so that's where the two come against each other, because there are certain types of jobs and how you got the job that I single out from this. My basic answer is I should be able to hire and fire who I want. And if you're saying something that I don't like or I disagree with, I can get rid of you, period. This is America. You can go get another job. You can start your own company. Right.
That's legal because most states are at will states, right?
Absolutely.
So your employer can fire you for any reason. And you should, I mean, when you take a job, I guess you should know that, right? So if I'm going to be a dumbass and go on Facebook and say something dumb,
mm-hmm.
I'm in trouble. I mean, I think so. I'm gonna take this a weird viewpoint, and maybe nobody's going to agree with me out there.
So I never finished answering for you.
Oh, good. Well, neither did I. Go ahead.
So I had, but I have a section of jobs and careers that I do not include in that. I don't think you should be able to fire Jimmy Kimmel. And not because of me watching the video and knowing what he said or what he didn't say.
Mm-hmm.
These are artists, whether you want to consider them artists or not. They are performers. They are entertainers. I don't want to live in a society where they have to follow law. That's basically it. I don't want them to, when they're thinking of a joke or when they're thinking of their commentary or when they're writing a play or creating a painting, I don't want them to ever think about what parameters they need to stay within, because that's the antithesis of what an artist is that I'm jumping out the box. So I may disagree with what you're saying, but I believe art, performative art, things like that should be excluded from that. And because of the way media works on these big channels, they are under FCC. I don't want the government having that much direct control in being able to control speech, because basically what is happening is the right is in office and now they're attacking the left, just like when the left was in office, they attacked the right. So you could literally have the people who are going to replace the people that are fired now, when somebody else get in office, they get fired just because of who's in office. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Phil. I mean, I think the government has gotten way too politicized from the standpoint of both media and, like you said, these are artists, and I'll completely agree with you. Whether it's a musician or a comedian or a late night talk show host, they should have some latitude. Like, I mean, look, the reason that we watch Saturday Night Live, or you and I have been watching the South Park series, is because it's comedy and it's bringing up current social values and experiments and discourse and whatnot. And I mean, that's why we watch it. So we expect that. So obviously they're going to say something negative from towards one side or the other, or both in some cases. By the way, I don't know if you heard, South Park got canceled for tonight. They canceled about a half an hour ago before we started recording this. They canceled it. So you know, you can paint that picture any way you want. I'm going to paint it my way, and I believe they probably. You had texted me yesterday, Phil, saying, "Hey, do you think they're going to talk about Charlie Kirk?" And I said, I wouldn't if I were them. And I have a feeling they may have put something in the episode, or they've scrambling at the last second. They didn't get the damn thing done now because they're worried about it. And that I think is a problem, because if these kinds of shows and these kind of, like you said, artists, it would be like if you told me, or all of a sudden the government said, you know, Taylor Swift can't write a breakup song anymore about ex-boyfriends because, you know, somebody might be mad at her ex-boyfriend. That's no bueno. Like she's an artist. Like this is what we expect. This is what we're looking for when we listen to music or we listen to comedy. So I think that's a big challenge. I do think, and I'm sure I'm going to get detractors on this, that, you know, when I say this, but I do think that Trump is pushing a very heavy hand on censorship, and I think he's pushing a very heavy hand on freedom of speech. I think that this is, you know, the left argues that this is an authoritarian regime that's going towards fascism, that all this stuff. I think in this case, this is some truth to that.
Yes.
I think that I do. I think that there's truth to that. I think that's a scary, scary thing. Now, having said that, I'm not going to say that the left doesn't do the same thing.
Oh, we just lived through it.
We just lived through it. And it's ongoing. I want to bring up, if for those of you out there that listen to me that are Democratic supporters, you might follow a woman her name is Heather Cox Richardson, and I say that she's the antithesis of Charlie Kirk, and she puts out, and she's very intelligent. She's like a professor, and she puts out very well written things and whatever. Anyways, so I've been following her to see what the left's viewpoint is. And I will know that on Saturday, I think it was Saturday, she put out a thing about the Charlie Kirk assassination and talked about how, you know, the right is spinning this and playing it all wrong. And she was blaming the thing on the super ultra far right. I forget the guy's name. I think did we talk about this last week? I don't remember. There's a guy that's like makes Charlie Kirk sing like he's a liberal. Any case.
Fuentes?
Fuentes. And she was blaming it on this. Now, that I think, okay, a week later, that has pretty much been shown to be completely false. And has this woman, who is a very educated, you know, always representing the left as somebody that's a fair voice, has she put out a retraction or an apology or an updated thing like, okay, well, that's not what happened? No, she hasn't said a fucking word, because they're just as bad as the right. And that's my point, because this is supposedly a woman that has very high character, you know, is like I said, she's very well educated, very well written. She panders largely towards middle-aged women. That's her audience, right? So very opposite of what maybe Charlie Kirk was doing, where he was targeting college age students. But I don't know where the hell I was going with this, but just to say that the problem is that this censorship thing is very much been done by both sides. The difference here, I would say, is Donald Trump is being far more successful at it. And I think it is starting to get very serious. And I don't know if I should say this out loud, but the Charlie Kirk thing is a turning point, literally. And I said this last week. There is a big, the left, and maybe that's not the right way to say this. I shouldn't even say that. The left took him out, but the guy that took him out probably did the most damage to the people on the left and the anti-Trumpers of anybody you could have done. It has probably caused the most damage to the liberal progressive movement of any event in our history of Donald Trump from his first term in office to now, is that the execution style of what we saw and how that's motivated the right and has motivated religion and has motivated Christianity. It's motivated students on campuses. I just read that they've had the unbelievable amounts of donations coming in. You're about to see on Sunday, they're having a memorial service where the President of the United States and virtually everybody that's anybody that's, whatever is going to be there in Arizona. So this has been created into such a big deal. And what does that mean? In my opinion, what that means is Donald Trump has been even more empowered and has even more people potentially, particularly in Charlie Kirk's following, which is the younger generation. And I think it just moves the needle even farther, which pushes Donald Trump even more power. And look, Donald Trump is like I described. He's like that dinosaur in Jurassic Park. He's pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and testing the wall. And he's trying to send everything to the Supreme Court. He's trying to send the firing of the one of the Treasury people or whatever to the Supreme Court. He's got the Supreme Court to some extent in his pocket. He's got the Senate in his pocket. He's got we're in a scary situation in America from that standpoint. I think he can do whatever he wants to do. So once again, I feel like our entire podcast has turned into Mike preaching about how the left and the liberals are so fucking stupid. But I swear to God, they're so fucking stupid because every single thing you guys do all the time makes Donald Trump stronger. You've not put forward one iota of any solution to weaken Donald Trump. Every single thing that happens makes him stronger, and it's scary because what you said, Phil, I mean, that's like authoritarianism. You're going towards like Viktor Orban or whatever, with the control of the media. I don't suspect that it's long before the rest of the late night people are also let go. And I'd be surprised if South Park doesn't go back to talking about, whether Twizzlers should be red or purple. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a. Let me give you the good side. Can I say one thing that's positive on this show? I think, and this is maybe a twisted, and you're probably going to disagree with me. I hope you do, actually, because I think I might be insane. The killing of Charlie Kirk has brought about one thing that is I think people are legitimately starting to become afraid of saying things, and that actually might take the temperature down a notch. I could be wrong about that, but I do think that your job security and even your business. Look at the guy I said about last week. I was talking about the guy that in Cincinnati that owned a barbecue joint. So here's an owner. So he's not an employee, and he mouthed off, and they're basically shutting him down at this point. He lost the contract with the stadium. They're in big trouble. So I think that business owners and employees and employers and general public and people even in the government or nurses and I think people are going to think a little bit smarter about what they say, and possibly that takes down the temperature a little bit, because if I'm not out mouthing off my shit on Facebook, maybe there'll be less mentally deranged people. And let's just be completely honest. The guy that shot Kirk is mentally ill. I mean, there's just no question in my mind. He's mentally ill, right? Nobody does that unless they're mentally ill. But they're egged on by this social discourse, and maybe if there was less of it, there would be less chance that these people like that would get crazy enough to grab a gun and go and shoot somebody. I don't know. Am I wrong?
What you're saying is very logical, and I would like it to be that way, but that's not the feeling that I'm getting. Most people I talk to, when I listen to their opinions, it really gives off the air of, wow, you really are around a lot of people like you. Because, and what I'm getting to is like, we just assume that maybe like the people with these liberal ideas would back down. But in their echo chamber, at the same time that you're thinking that they're getting this derision, canceling, whatever, they're getting pats on the back and support on theirs. That's what they're hearing in their echo chamber. That's why you had a guy go out and shoot Charlie Kirk, because he's part of groups that are professing these ideas. If the things that they are saying so far are accurate, he had a group of people to support him, if it was no more than just to support him in the ideas. And wow, I've been predicting this, and I said the second phase was coming, but I guess the second phase is already here. I told you early on, I've been building a picture, and I said the next phase is that some of these crazy one-off people are gonna start realizing that there are people who think like them and group together. Well, like I said, if everything is true what they say about them, they've been grouping together. This is just their first action, or action that has been identified.
So I'm weird. Am I weird? Let me ask you this question. Maybe the listeners out there can write in and tell me whether I'm weird or not. So I think I said last week, I never followed Charlie Kirk. I'm not a religious person. There's a bunch of ideas that he professes. Okay. I spent 3 hours plus listening to Charlie Kirk since you and I and you guys out there in Listenerville came together last week, and I listened to a bunch of stuff. I listened to him doing a podcast with a bunch of porn stars. I listened to him with Gavin Newsom. I listened to him with you name it. I listened to all this shit. I still don't agree with a bunch of stuff that he says. However, and correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe somebody will, I'm sure, but send me the stuff and unedited. The one thing I will say about him that I found that I guess I didn't, because I was listening to the left a lot, and the left was portraying him as racist, sexist, crazy, overzealous religious, in your face, all the stuff I've heard. And I got to tell you, I didn't see any of that. Now, maybe I didn't watch the right videos. I watched a lot of videos, though. I watched the video about him talking about Martin Luther King. I watched the video about him talking about the guy that got shot, the guy that last year, forget his name. Anyways, I listened to a lot of broad range of topics: abortion, in vitro fertilization. Anyways, my point is, and I'm not saying I agree with what he said. What I'm saying is when I listened to him, he did it in a I'll call it a respectable way, meaning that they didn't raise their voices. There wasn't swearing. There wasn't and maybe he was full of shit. This is not a judgment of the guy, okay? But he comes across as legitimately listening to the other side. So as an example, when he was on the and I like, you know me, I like to talk about podcasts, and the podcast that he was on, what was the name of the podcast? I forget. I'm looking on my computer here, but I don't see it. He was with the porn stars. I mean, he sat in a room and they talked about sex and having three ways, and this is not the image that the left portrayed to me. I never did I think Charlie Kirk would sit in a room and even talk to a bunch of porn stars and then have conversations about sex and I mean they were all over the place, and he never raised his voice. He simply asked them questions, and yes, he's a very intelligent guy. So he had a system and a theory. He would ask a question, and yes, do I think he was leading and trying to? Yes, because he's a Christian nationalist. Was he trying to convert people to his religion? Yes, absolutely. That's his job. But I don't view him as. I guess I was expecting more of a terrorist, and I didn't get that. I got somebody that was being listening. He wasn't going to bend his opinion, which, by the way, I wouldn't expect him to, and nor did the porn star who said, right now I make $1 million on OnlyFans, and there's no reason that having sex out of wedlock is cool, and I don't think it's that big of a deal, and blah blah blah. I respect her opinion too. I guess what it was interesting that somebody who was able to have a discourse back and forth with, quote, the other side is the guy that gets targeted. Whereas I could name you a lot of people on the right and the left, for that matter, that I could see people wanting to shoot. You know what I mean? That are just like in your face and really disgusting. And that's not the viewpoint that I got from him at all. Now, I mean, maybe some of the ideas, if you're on the other side, would make you disgusted, but I don't know. I didn't get that.
I think this directly hits the nail on the head of some of what I wanted to touch on in this conversation. I've been scouring social media and the internet, looking at both sides and what they have to say. And what is most common is everybody has an opinion, and they openly, willfully tell you, well, I never heard of Charlie Kirk. Mm-hmm. Well, I've only listened to 3 hours of his speeches. Mm-hmm. And they are ready to give definitive thoughts and ideas about what they think the direction of the person was taking things, who they were a part of, who paid for them to be in the position they are. I mean, they got like serious opinions and off of very limited information.
Yes, and I said I listened to 3 hours. I bet you 98% of the people that are on the left didn't listen to 3 minutes.
I'm saying that a majority of people should not be given a critique on if he's a good person or a bad person.
Yep.
Either side.
I agree.
If you didn't start checking him out, if you just started checking him out and finding out about him in the last week, shut up.
Yep.
That's how I feel about it.
But that's everybody, Phil.
Not me. I've been watching him for years.
Maybe, okay. So, but do you not think that you and I are fucking weird? Because listen,
and I haven't given my opinion.
We both intentionally go onto the internet and do research on both sides. Intentionally. I don't think that most people do that. Am I wrong?
Oh, I know they don't. Just the reaction, like when I used to actually read paperback books and books, hardbound books, and I'd go in a public place and people would assume by the name of the book and who it was written by that I was on a side or another. And it's like, no, I read books from everybody because I want to know what they thinking.
Okay, so there's 3 levels of. There's Phil's level who you're professing that you've followed Charlie Kirk or know about it, whatever, for a long time. Then there's me, who has spent hours looking at him, looking at clips. And then there's the general public, which is probably just listening to whatever the talking points are of their team. So,
yes.
So, okay. So what I'm getting at here, and this is part of what
I'm even including the people that are journalists on TV.
Yeah, of course. Well, largely, look, journalists don't have time to do a lot of research. They largely, nowadays, most journalists largely are repeating what the talking point is that was given to them.
I used the wrong words, not the journalists. You know, they'll have those panels where they'll have commentators who
even worse
that are part of the system that should know things, and they usually have very rudimentary, elementary thoughts and ideas and knowledge about almost everything.
Yep, agreed. So I would say that what I found out, I'll just give you what I found out over last week from this week. You were right last week. I was taking the approach that I didn't think that he was that big of a threat. And you very, very quickly corrected me, or in your opinion said he's a huge threat. And I now see it because the guy is, just the fact that he's super charismatic and very convincing and very intelligent. Those are the kinds of people that will sway people to their side. Because I think we've talked about this before. Most people are sheep. So sheep are looking for direction. They're looking for we talked about this 3-4 weeks ago on the podcast. And I think in America right now, there's more people than not are in favor of a authoritarian government or a dictatorship because they want to be led. And that's what you're seeing with the Trump thing. But I think it's true with Charlie Kirk. I think he was a huge threat to anybody that perceived that they didn't agree with him. And the reason I'm using the word perceived is because I think there's a lot of people that were threatened by him that are probably not even sure why, because they were told to be threatened by him. And then there are legitimate groups of people that are threatened by him that probably did follow him for a long time or know about him, that realize what the ultimate agenda is. And I'm not going to profess that I know what his ultimate agenda is. All I'm professing is that he didn't come across at all the way I was seeing him largely painted by the left. Doesn't mean the left is wrong. It just means they're not presenting it well.
Mike, Attorney General Pam Bondi says she'll absolutely target businesses that refuse to print Charlie Kirk memorial posters. But Mike, the Supreme Court has already ruled in Masterpiece Cake Shop and again in 303 Creative that government can't force businesses to create expressive content they disagree with. So is Bondi threatening action that the Constitution won't even allow, or did she let it slip that they have plans that are unconstitutional?
Oh, I think they have plans that are unconstitutional. I think that.
Go.
No, I mean, look, I'm going to take a hard line here against this because they are way off base. If Starbucks, who is a private company, well, I mean, it's a public company, but is not government, decides that they want to put Charlie Kirk's face on all Starbucks cups, which obviously they're never going to do. But if they did, that's their choice, and they're going to lose 50% or more of their customer base. I mean, it would be a move that would be astronomically stupid. But hey, they're entitled to that. Pam Bondi is not entitled at all as a government agent, as a minion of Donald Trump. Let's just cut to the chase, because that order came right down from Donald Trump. As much as I'm not a conspiracy theorist, or less so than Phil, a lot of this shit comes out of Trump's mind. Let me tell you, this shit comes from the top.
They don't speak freely?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
More so than in any other presidential cabinet.
Right.
I think his fall in line with him more than any.
Oh, it's like little minions. It's just like little minions walking around. So there's no part of that do I think is a good idea. No part of that at all. The government needs to stay the hell. I was actually shocked when I saw that Pete Hegseth was getting involved with a potentially, I don't know, firing is probably not the right terminology, but there were people in the military that said stuff. Now, there's a difference between working at Starbucks and being in the military.
Absolutely. You sign away your rights. Yeah, the day you join, you sign away your rights. So that ain't
absolutely
right.
But the government needs to stay out of the dialogue of whether a soldier is, pro Charlie Kirk or anti Charlie Kirk. That, you know what I mean? That's a problem. I mean, I guess they could discipline somebody from a standpoint of if they're causing strife or something else, but on their own. I don't know how I feel about, like, look, if somebody puts something on their Facebook page.
My thing, Mike, is I always like to look at the question or the problem or the issue that people are talking about and not start there. I like to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the attorney general.
Right.
Attorney general.
Yeah.
Okay.
The highest point of law.
And she's in the cabinet of the United States, representing the president as the attorney general.
Which, by the way, who's supposed to represent all citizens.
Mm-hmm. But more importantly than that, she's supposed to represent the Constitution.
Right.
She's supposed to represent the Constitution over the people.
Mm-hmm.
So where I'm getting to is I feel like anybody that works in the legal spectrum of government, once they have overtly said something that is a basic constitutional thing, and they're saying that I'm going to do something in my position opposite of that, that person should be immediately fired. That should be like the worst offense that you could do as somebody as attorney general is to on a mic say, I'm going to do something against the Constitution. It should just be automatic. Because this isn't something like you could be like, well, is it or is it not? Maybe she didn't know. This is basic Constitution here.
Well, I don't know whether she's qualified for the job in the first place. However,
I'm headed to that too. That's where I was headed.
I mean, that would prove that she's not. But she above anybody else should know that. Look, there's no separation. What you saw in Trump's first term and his second term is completely different. There's no separate. Remember how many people he fired or quit on him or talked about him or other stuff? He's now managed to put only little minions in there, and none of them are questioning anything, regardless of what their actual job is supposed to be. And her job as the Attorney General is supposed to be, like you said, protect the Constitution of the United States above and first and foremost above all else. And that is in no way doing that. No way doing that at all. So that's some scary shit.
That's what I'm saying. That literally makes me feel like I don't have protection, because when you have to enter the legal system and fight it, when things don't go your way and you feel like you're in the right, you always have the hope, I can go to the higher court, I can go to the higher office and get this corrected. But the highest person is literally saying, I'm going to do something against the Constitution.
Well, even worse, I'm not so sure the Supreme Court is necessarily protecting the Constitution at this point either. A lot of things are right. I mean, he's got some control over that. Look, we're in a situation right now. I'll give you two contrasting things. Jimmy Kimmel, who gets let go, said, if you listen to the tape of what he said about Charlie Kirk, to me it was nothing. It was nothing. He really didn't say anything that was like that striking. Meanwhile, Brian Kilmeade on Fox News basically came out on air, said that he thought, it's made a comment like all homeless people should be killed. Nothing happened to him. So that right there goes to show you who's in power and who's going to get let go right now. And that's a problem because that is not representing 100% of the people in the United States. It's only representing those that agree with MAGA Nation.
I agree with that. Mike, Senator Marco Rubio says it makes no sense for foreign-born visa holders to remain in the U.S. if they glorify the killing of Charlie Kirk. The State Department agrees, warning it will revoke visas of anyone praising violence against political figures. Mike, should celebrating an assassination online be grounds for losing your visa?
So I'm going to give you a mixed answer to this. There's part of me that agrees and part of me that disagrees. And what I mean by that, in this case, I think that is also a no bueno. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Charlie Kirk is not a political figure by definition, meaning he is not the president of the United States. He is not a congressman. He's not a. So let's hypothetically say the president was killed or a senator was killed. And somebody said, "Oh, I'm glad to see that happen, blah, blah, blah." Yeah, we should send him out. That's part of when you sign your visa paperwork to come into the United States as a foreigner, there is a code of ethics that you have to meet. And so I do believe that we have the right as the United States to send people or revoke visas based on things that they could say about politicians or political things. Charlie Kirk was the CEO of Turning Point and was an influencer and a podcaster. No, I do not think that you could. No, to me, is a separation. I maybe miscorrectly said that last week where I said Charlie Kirk wasn't powerful. What I meant was he's not powerful in government. He doesn't have a legal right to something. Very powerful in speech, but there's a difference. There's a big difference between a popular guy,
yeah,
and a representative of the United States of America. He is not a representative of the United States of America. Therefore, I don't think the government has any right to throw somebody. That would be like saying, if I don't know, they fucking executed the CEO of Starbucks and be like, and they said bad things. We're going to throw you out because of that. No, that doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you, but kind of like from a different direction, Mike. Like, I agree about him not being a politician and everything, but I just feel like it shouldn't be a specific directive from Marco Rubio about this particular incident. It should just be a known fact that if you come to America and you're on a visa, you don't talk about nothing.
Yes.
Mind your business, shut up, enjoy the country.
Well, so here's my fear, Phil, is exactly what you just said. Instead of saying you need to obey a code of ethics and a code of honor when you come to the United States as a visa holder, which they do say, by the way, it's written in the paperwork. Instead of just simply saying that, what I feel like is happening is that the government under Trump is organizing a new. They'll probably come up with a name because that's what Trump likes to do. Mm-hmm. So instead of Doge, we're going to
get a Charlie Kirk something before they submit something.
Yes. Well, even worse than that, it's going to be like the department of you're going against what we say and you're going to get fired department. That's what it feels like they're going to set up. No?
Mike, it's so funny that they might hear this and actually use it. I'm like, that's cool. The young kids, they might do that shit.
Yep. And I think that's a scary slope. And one of the reasons I tend to, And I'm going to admit out loud, one of the reasons I probably had some, affinity is not the right word. When I was listening to the Charlie Kirk stuff, is that because he was doing what we did. I have an affinity for media and podcasters and people that are influencers, because I do that myself. So I very much appreciate people trying to influence people, and I get that is not necessarily. You have to take that for what it is. Whether you're listening to Charlie Kirk or you're listening to me and Phil, there's a slant. And in our podcast, we try to keep it as unslanted as possible, but we're humans. We still have opinions.
And we also start this podcast with a disclaimer. The opinion you follow should be your own.
Yes.
Just consider this I forget what I say.
Yeah. But let's take 2 minutes to explain. I mean, I really firmly believe that, and the reason I do this podcast is because I hope that at least one person will glean a bit of information from the two of us that they didn't, or they weren't aware of, or they didn't think about. So for me, it's an educational thing. And I'm not trying to convince you to necessarily be exactly like me, or I don't want you necessarily to be exactly like Phil, but I hope that we bring some amount of clarity maybe to some of the issues, or at least we say something that you'll be like, oh God, I don't agree with him at all on that, but it makes you think.
That's what I want.
Yes, it's the thinking part.
I want people to hear me and not take my word for it. Be like,
go research.
I haven't heard that before. Maybe let me go look.
Yes.
I don't want you to believe me.
Agreed. And so for me, that's I get the joy out of doing this by hoping that there's at least one person that gets something out of it educationally, and enriches themselves by going and doing their own research and coming to their own conclusion. Don't listen to what I got to say. Earlier I said I listened to Charlie Kirk on a podcast with a bunch of porn stars. Don't listen to what I got to say about it. Go listen to it yourself. You make your own judgment on it. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just here to pass along what I see myself. And that's kind of what we.
I think we're setting an example, Mike. I mean, in so many different ways, I think we're setting an example. We don't always agree.
Nope.
But we ain't called each other out our names. We get to the end of the podcast, we debrief, we go places, we meet up, we party.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Contrary to popular belief, Phil and I actually talk outside of the podcast, and we do a little episode summary after we get done and talk about stuff. And sometimes, and admittedly, I mean, I'm not gonna, we don't lie, right? There are things that we don't say on the podcast sometimes. Sometimes it's because we agreed beforehand. Let's not go down that road, and sometimes it's like we've both. I think a lot of times we agree and we're like, yeah, that's we don't really
just be bland.
Yeah, so there's some discussion about that, but
which is something else I don't like, Mike, that I see in a lot of these things. The people will be like, I'm on this side, and both of the guys are just cheerleading the whole time. You're not hearing no dissent, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is gross.
I mean, I gotta be. Sometimes sometimes I'll listen to the podcast and I'll be like, God, I don't even agree with what I said. I'll be like, you know what? I got to go to next week. I got to change my mind on that and say something different.
Same here, bro. They're like, oh, I should have shut up. Do you know how many times, Mike? And I got a pretty much perfect track record. Unless something happened in the middle of the show, what you guys are watching, what you guys are listening to is what happened from beginning to end.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of edit.
But during the edit, there has been many a times where I wanted to cut something out I said.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, occasionally Phil will put up an advertisement for the podcast, too. I go, oh, damn, I can't believe I said that. But
I give you credit, Mike, because I've even told you, I'll be challenging you with those edits, and you have never said, no, don't put that out. So hats off to you on that.
I like to be real, and I also wish more people were like us from a standpoint of I think that we'd have less shootings going on. I think if people actually, words are very powerful. So, I like to believe that the way of fighting somebody that you don't like is give the counter opinion. So if somebody's standing for XYZ, whether it's like, they're anti-free choice as an example in abortion, well, give your counter opinion. Give us your strong argument on the other side. I mean, to me, that's a dialogue. Shooting the guy because he thought, because he's religious on one side, that don't really make any sense. If anything, and I think I hate to say this out loud. I don't even like using this word, but he's become a martyr at this point. He's made, like I said at the top of the podcast, he's made Donald Trump stronger. Clearly, if you did not support Charlie Kirk, it's very unlikely that you support Donald Trump. So at the end of the day, you've made your position weaker rather than having a discourse and talking about it. Give us your side. And that's my biggest pet peeve. And, I know we've turned the podcast into over the last year a ranting about the Democrats, but a lot of that is my frustration with you need to come up with an argument other than I hate Donald Trump. Like that argument is, please, God, come up with something.
So, Mike, all of this has pretty much been about free speech that we've talked about. Here's a thought, Mike.
Yep.
Maybe it's time we stop saying free speech, both in law and in conversation, because speech isn't free. Every word carries a cost, backlash, cancellation, maybe even losing your job. So if it always comes with a price, shouldn't we just call it what it is? Speech. Mike, do you think dropping the word free makes sense? The reason why I say it is I'm saying that we should have free speech, but quit saying it's free. You should be able to say what you want, but the implication of no repercussion needs to quit being put out there, because that's people's first thing is it's free speech.
No, they confuse free speech with speech. Speech has consequences. Speech is powerful, as we said earlier. So free is a bad word because it doesn't mean anything. I agree with you on that. It's not free. If I say something that's astronomically in poor judgment, I am going to suffer the consequences. Now, you and I happen to be in a situation where we largely, I don't want to say we're immune to it, but we're more immune than a lot of people to being able to say stuff.
We're able to not give a fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're lucky on that. We can kind of say what we want. And unfortunately, that is also true to large extents of some of these people that have become powerful. Charlie Kirk's a good example of this. Joe Rogan, people like that. They're so wealthy and so powerful, and you'll see it even on some of these guys I watch. Ex Fox News or ex CNN people. This week I've been listening to a bunch of them. They all have their own podcast. They all control their own show at this point, so they don't really have too many repercussions. So they really can largely say what they want. But people that are still with the original networks, or that have jobs, or that work for companies, or that are, work for a hospital, you guys are not, you can't use the word free speech. And that's the honest truth. You can't. It's not free. There is a consequence.
Not at all. Not at all. Mike, in a CNN interview, Democratic Senator John Fetterman just said what a lot of Democrats won't admit. They've forgotten why they lost and need to stop calling Trump an autocrat. Because let's be honest, Trump was elected. He's not some dictator. And every time Democrats throw around that label, they look weak and out of touch with real voters. So, Mike, is this name calling doing Democrats more harm than good?
Yes. Yep. They need to move on. They got to get off the Trump, off the Epstein, he's a felon, off he raped some girl 300 years ago. Nobody cares. And when I say nobody, I mean his supporters, who, by the way, voted him in and were obviously over 51%. They don't care. So no, those arguments are not going to work. In order for the Democrats or the people on the left to regain control, they need to get some of those people that are in the middle onto their team. So they need to start using arguments that are not negative, but positive towards what their agenda is. And as you have so eloquently stated on this podcast a million times, it has to be the 80% rule. They've got to pick some things that most people in America actually give a damn about. And this, if anything, this election showed we don't give a shit about transgender rights. We don't give a shit about what flag you can fly here and there and what letter you're putting your name and who we don't. There's not. When I say we don't care, what I mean is there's not enough people that are affected personally, because when it comes down to a vote, particularly on the national level, it usually comes down at the end of the day to economics. And the reality is you're going to vote with your paycheck. And if you feel like whoever's coming in is going to make you and your family better off, that's who you're voting for. So at the end of the day, if there's some guy that wants to play on the girls' soccer team, you really don't give a shit, because that isn't going to put food on your dining room table. And unfortunately, the Democrats have taken a path of, I don't know, I guess they want to protect every single life form. It's the only way and I'm not a Democrat, and obviously that comes across, but I'm also not a Republican. I don't like Trump. I don't like the autocratic thing that's going on. I don't like this takeover. I don't like this heavy-handed, highly presidential controlled government that we've now gone to, which, by the way, I think is forever. I don't think it's going to go away. I think whoever comes next, regardless of whether they're a Republican or Democrat, is going to look. If a Democrat gets elected next term, they're going to be like, "Hey, the stuff that Trump made us stronger. This is good." They're not going to get rid of that. So
first, Mike, thank you for repeatedly giving me credit for coming up with the 80-20 thing.
I use it all the time.
Because people, I hear them using it all the time, and nobody believes. No, I've been saying that for about 2 years.
Yep. Phil has been saying this forever, and he's dead on.
But
you called the election. Phil, of all my friends, I think called the fact that Trump was going to win the election earlier than anybody else that I know, by far.
But with this 80-20 thing, there's also the idea of sometimes you're in a situation where you're forced to take the 20 in certain situations. But there are a lot of things that they could be addressing that they don't, that are very reasonable. Like the economy is still like crap. There are so many parts of the economy that they could just dissect and hammer home that the average everyday American would be listening to them totally relating with. And that's the main reason why the Republicans are in office right now, is because they were saying relatable things. And there's a bunch of relatable stuff that they could address that the Republicans are not doing. So I just don't understand the choices. Let's choose the ones we can't win versus these good ones that are just like delicious to use.
It's and I'll use the Epstein thing as an example of this. They're still talking about this. At the end of the day, not enough people really care. They just don't care. It happened a long time ago. If Trump actually did something that was illegal and they had proof, it would have came out by now. So, like, this is just, it doesn't, who cares?
Calling for the Epstein files is like just something cool to say, like saying no Diddy.
Yep. And there's probably just as many people on the left that are going to get implicated in it as on the right. So at the end of the day, it's just noise. And by the way, Donald Trump has taken this to the next level. he has used this. I would argue, and I know this sounds backwards, but I would argue his felony charges and his accusations that he raped somebody and the Epstein drama and all this stuff helps him. And I think he knows it helps him. And he uses all this because he's like a distraction bomber. And he just tosses things in different directions. And he says crazy stuff sometimes. And all of this is picked up by the other side, and they latch onto it like it's hot potato. And the Democrats go, oh, hot potato, let me hold on to this. And then they don't let go. They don't hand it off to the next guy. And that's the problem. And Trump knows this by now. So, he gets away with saying crazy stuff. And at this point, that's his MO. And we've known this now for 10 years. It's not going to change. So, guys, you got to come up with something different.
But you can especially get away with saying crazy stuff when the opposition fights for even crazier stuff.
Exactly. Yep.
They literally make the crazy man look insane.
Yep. Yeah, they come up with some of these things that they want to do or talk about. It's like, wait a minute here. Why are you spending, if you have a 3-hour news conference, they spend 2.5 hours talking about something that affects, one person in the entire city. And it's like, I don't get it.
So, Mike, this whole podcast today has pretty much been about free speech in one way or another.
Yep.
And to me, the thing that I take away from it is that it's so important that it was very easily to talk about it for over an hour. I wasn't trying to stretch it out. I still have so much to say about it.
Well, let's bring it back to us for a second. Do you think there's ever going to be a chance that we get banned from Apple or Spotify or YouTube or some other outlet? Because who knows? We say something that somebody doesn't like.
You just answered it yourself. And we've just described what the culture is throughout the hour. There's a culture in society that would allow for someone to be pissed off about something we said, whether it's right or wrong, and we'd be just out. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the problem is like, we're a little bit more independent of it because we can move to, there's many platforms out there. Somebody will host us. So, because we do it, we're self-produced basically. So we have a lot more control over, say, if you and I worked on, for ABC or something. But I mean, there could be a point at which censorship here. This is what I don't like about it. It's a very slippery slope. Right now, the FCC can control the major networks. They can control things like this. They are obviously giving us slant control based on who's in power right now. But that is a slippery slope because we also know that we have a bunch of oligarchs that are running the government. So next thing you know, you get Zuckerberg and you get Google and you get who owns YouTube, by the way, and you get Tim Cook who owns Apple. And all of a sudden, there could be a bunch of podcast formats, as an example, that no longer do what we do because Trump told them, hey, Tim, you can't have Phil and Mike on Apple no more. Mike said that I was he didn't like me. That could happen.
I absolutely see something like that happening in the very near future. And I believe the main person that they will be attacking is YouTube. Now, I know that sometimes people play chess, so they may attack somebody that's in the same industry, but it's to set the precedent to apply it to a bigger company. That's how they like to do it, because if they address the big elephant in the room, he'll stomp them with his money.
Right.
So, but I think YouTube is going to become a serious target real fast. We may be coming back next week and the whole thing be about what is YouTube going to do?
Yep.
Because YouTube is one of the last easy places to know about, access, and share with others.
Particularly video.
And because I went, like when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I saw, because I went to YouTube almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
There were actual videos of the whole thing all the way through. There were people who were covering it live, and you got to see the whole thing. They swiped all those things after the fact, but they were on there.
Yep.
So the point I'm in, and then there are ideas. I often hear ideas that are counter to everything, counter to good, counter to bad, counter to what's an appropriate age for children to have sex. I hear all kind of conversations on this YouTube.
Yep.
So I see them being attacked, and attacked easily, because there are credible reasons to put some parameters up and rules, because there's some crazy stuff on YouTube.
And look at the other fear while we're talking about freedom of speech is that they just announced this week that TikTok is being bought by Americans, or at least TikTok in America. And if you look at the list of investors in that, that's a Donald Trump controlled group. Like, let's just call it what it is. So I see that that's one more way of censoring or controlling media. I think Trump, he's no dumb cookie, and he's been in media for his whole life. He is basically taking over the media. And if you guys haven't paid attention to history, the first thing that a dictator does, or a closed society in a country, is take over the media. And like, if you don't think he's trying to take over the media, you're dumb as a box of rocks.
Forgive me for not remembering who said it, because it's some famous smart person that I should know their name. But they said the quickest way to control the people is not with guns, but with the printing press.
Absolutely. Yep.
You heard that before?
Yep, absolutely. And I think to some extent, that's actually become even more true into today's society. Gone are the printing presses. However, now our printing press is like live, broadcast to you immediately, no time delay whatsoever.
Bro, in my lifetime, let's just take the shooting. I remember when John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
They did not show a full clip, a Zapruder clip, until the 80s.
That's right.
It was always like once in a while you'd get this big announcement that some show was going to give you a little bit, like him driving, and then it would stop before the shot, or it'd be after, or they'd show you the grassy knoll. And now we're to the point where it's just like watching a violent video game.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, for sure.
Anything else you want to say, Mike?
Wow. I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast, because I did. I got some things off my chest, I think.
I always enjoy talking to you, Mike. I know I'm going to have an intelligent conversation. All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.